Hello students, welcome to Darasa. I'm Teacher Whitney and today we're going to be talking about solving quadratic expressions by the use of quadratic formula. So in our previous lesson, we talked about solving quadratic expressions by the use of completing square method. But today we're going to be talking about quadratic formula. If you could just recall on the completing square method, we were having a quadratic expression, and in our quadratic expression the constant was crossing over the equal sign and it changes its sign. Then after that we use the perfect square method to find a new constant. So this new constant, we were adding it to both sides, the left hand side and the right hand side. Then after adding, we get a new quadratic expression on our left hand side. So we factorize it to get new factors. So after getting these new factors, we work it out to get our value of x. Now, today we're going to talk about the quadratic formula. Quadratic formula is very simple. So you have to know the quadratic formula. So you have a formula which is negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So when you're having your quadratic expression, you have to identify your a, your b, and your c. And we said a quadratic expression is usually in the form ax squared plus bx plus c, where your a is the coefficient of x squared, your b is the coefficient of x, and your c is your constant. So when you're having your quadratic formula, which is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, you identify your a, b, and c, and you simply replace them in your quadratic formula. So it's very simple. I'll repeat. To work out your quadratic expression using your quadratic formula, what you're going to do is you have to identify your a, b, and c in your quadratic expression. And we said a quadratic expression is usually in the form ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0, where your a is the coefficient of x squared, your b is the coefficient of x, and your c is your constant. So you write your formula, which is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So you'll just come and replace your a, b, and c. Very simple. Now let's look at an example. So you're given solve 2x squared minus 5x minus 3 is equals to 0 using the quadratic formula. So the first thing you're going to do is identify your a, b, and c. So your a is 2, your b is negative 5, and your c is negative 3. Then you write your formula, and your formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So now you're going to replace your a, b, and c. So replacing them, we are going to have negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 25 minus 4 into 2 times negative 3 all over 2 times 2. Now working it out, you'll get 5 plus or minus, working the square root part, you'll get 49. So now we're looking for the square root of 49 all over 4. Working it out, you'll get 5 plus or minus 7 over everything over 4. So when you work this out, your answer should be 3 or negative a half. Now looking at another example, so you've been given solve x squared plus 7x plus 3 is equals to 0 using the quadratic formula. So the first thing you're going to do is you look at your question, you identify your a, b, and c. So your a is 1 because the coefficient of x squared is 1. Your b is 7 because the coefficient of x is 7. And your c is 3 because simply the constant is 3. Then you just write your formula, which is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Taking your a, b, and c, your values, and replacing them in the formula, you're going to get negative 7 plus or minus everything into bracket 7 squared minus 4 times 1 times 3 all over 2 times 1. So solving this, you're going to get negative 7 plus or minus a square root of 37 all over 2. Working this out, your answer should be negative 6.5415 or 0.917. So it's very simple. So long as you've identified your A, B, and C, you just write your formula and then you replace them. Very simple. Now, our next example is, there are times when the given examples that I've given you, you find that your values are in X. So you use to X. What if you're given 9p squared plus 24p plus 16 is equals to 0? So you'll be told solve 9p squared plus 24p plus 16 is equals to 0 using quadratic formula. How do you work it out? I said the first thing you do is you identify your A, B, and C. So your A is 9, your B is 24, and your C is 16. So p squared and p has just replaced x squared and x. It's just there to confuse you, but it's the same thing. So we're going to replace our 9, 24, and 16 in our formula. And remember, our quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So you just come and take your values of a, b, and c and you replace them in your formula. So replacing them, your answer should be negative 1.333. Now, there are times when they change the question, in that in everything we've been doing, you find that it's systematic. We said a quadratic expression is an expression in the form ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. Now, what if they change it in that the expression becomes bx plus c plus ax squared? It's the same thing, it's just that they have changed the values. They've played with the values. So in this case, you can just rearrange them so that it can be in the form that you are used to. For example, you're given 1 minus 3x minus 3x squared is equals to 0. So we are used to x squared being the first one, but here it's coming to the last place where we usually used to having the constant. So the first thing you can do is you just change it so that it can be in the form you are used to. So when you change it, it will be negative 3x squared minus 3x plus 1 is equals to 0. Remember, you have to look to look at the sign before it. It's the sign before it that guides you. So you will have negative 3x squared minus 3x plus 1 is equals to 0. Now, after this, you identify your A, B, and C. So your A is negative 3, your B is negative 3, and your C is 1. Writing your formula, you'll have negative B plus or minus B square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So you replace your a, b, and c. So replacing your a, b, and c, after working it out, your answer should be negative 0.64 or 1.264. So quadratic formula is very easy. You just identify you must know how your expression is usually appears. So we said a quadratic expression is usually in the form ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. So you have your a, b, and c, where a is the coefficient of x squared, b is the coefficient of x, and c is a constant. And remember, a, b, and c are usually constants. So after identifying your a, b, and c, you come write your quadratic formula. And your quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, everything all over 2a. So you come and replace your a, b, and c. So I said when you're solving problems for quadratic expressions, sometimes you'd be told solve the following quadratic expression, and you're not asked to either use the complete square method or the quadratic method. So you can use either, of which I prefer the quadratic formula because it's very easy since you have the formula and you're just replacing the numbers. But most of the time, you usually are restricted to using the completing square method, or you'll be told solve the quadratic expression by the use of a quadratic formula. So in those cases, you're going to use the quadratic formula. So I hope at the end of this lesson, you're able to know the difference when you're told to solve using the completing square method and the quadratic formula. I also hope you're able to say the quadratic formula without looking at the book, so you must know it. And then I hope you know how to identify your A, B, and C. So on our next level, we're going to talk about how to solve quadratic expressions by the use of graphs. I've been your teacher, Whitney. Thank you.